On Central Illinois on the record, the multi-billion-dollar balloon keeps getting bigger. Why some say the state must raise taxes to tackle the deficit. Plus, prosecuting predators, how state lawmakers are trying to ensure victims see justice. And eliminating opioid abuse, the steps being taken in Washington to end the epidemic.
Now, from your local election headquarters, this is Central Illinois on the record.
I don't want to go from the frying pan to the fire and take a not very good system and make it worse.
The school funding feud continues, this time the push coming from the Twin Cities. Welcome to Central Illinois on the record. I'm Paul Cicchini. School districts and politicians across the state agree something needs to be done with funding, but what has turned into the multi-million-dollar question. School leaders say if something doesn't change, many districts, including Unit 5 and Normal, will lose millions.
$8 million, $8 million plus per year for Unit 5 would absolutely be devastating.
A visit from Governor Bruce Rauner Thursday
nice to meet you.
Gave Unit 5 Superintendent Mark Daniel a chance to show off Normal West Community High School.
We've got wonderful teachers here in Normal West.
But it also gave him a chance to take a stand for school funding.
We've hit probably the bottom of the barrel.
The district is struggling without getting all the money they are promised.
We've already tried to reduce number of classroom teachers. We've reduced building principals. We've reduced central office staff.
Daniel says a current funding bill going through the General Assembly would cut $8 million from their general state aid. But even if it makes it out of the General Assembly, the governor says he will not sign it.
I've got to study it in more detail to see the math, but on a preliminary basis, it looks like it would cut most school districts' amount of state money significantly.
Both Daniel and Rauner agree the formula needs to change, and now, but not this way.
I don't know that we can get this done in the next 2 weeks, but I think in the coming months, I'm cautiously optimistic we can get a new funding formula done.
We don't want to go backwards, so something has to be resolved very quickly.
That was Hannah Hilliard reporting. Downstate Democrats say their latest plan is best for all districts where no one comes up short. But the State Board of Education looked at the numbers if the bill became law and found the proposal would take funding from downstate districts and send it to Chicago. Lawmakers addressed those claims in a press conference last week, saying the numbers used by ISBE were from 2015 and not funding levels that were recently proposed. The model does not show the nearly $200 million to general state aid for schools in the 2016 education budget. And legislators say their bill ensures no school loses revenue next year.
This ought not be a Democrat or Republican issue. This should be a conversation about how we change the system that has been, very difficult on downstate districts.
Sports and other extracurricular activities might not happen next year at Peoria Public Schools. The district discussed making cuts to several programs, including fall sports, at a board meeting last week. That's because the district is $5 million in the hole and is worried about the general state aid next year. Other cuts could include clubs and school plays. Some students say these cuts would take away opportunities. The district says it may not have a choice.
We have no fat left to cut. I mean, we've cut the last couple of years. These program committees have been working, trying to cut everything out of the budget that isn't needed.
These cuts are only proposals. The district will not have a more solid plan in place until August. Programs for the poor and vulnerable, desperate for funding, got an almost $1 billion in help last week. Lawmakers approved a bill for $700 million to fund human services that have gone without support since July. The bill funds homeless prevention programs, addiction treatment services, and veterans assistance programs. The governor doesn't like the stopgap measure, but it did pass with veto-proof majorities. Disability advocates asking lawmakers to close institutions across the state as part of an effort to save millions of dollars. The goal is to close 6 of the 7 institutions by 2020. Illinois is spending over $400 million to operate them. The average cost per person, about $250,000, nearly 5 times the cost of living in the community. People who work with those who have been institutionalized say it gives them a whole new life.
Economically, it makes sense, but more importantly, the people changes their lives. The quality of life is just dramatically enhanced.
Opponents say these institutions are needed. Advocates say one should be enough. The state's budget deficit has grown from $3 billion at the beginning of the budget crisis to upwards of $5 billion. Calculations by the state's independent commission show Illinois would be hard-pressed to balance its deficit without a tax increase. But as Matt Porter reports, lawmakers haven't been willing to stomach it.
Our effort to come up with new revenue, it may be that there's a tax increase that impacts every Illinois citizen.
Democrats sought to raise almost $2 billion by taxing the wealthy, while the rest of the state would have had a tax cut.
Well, the fair tax would have worked. 33 states out of 50 have it.
But now the state will have to raise its other taxes to make up at least a $5 billion deficit. Social service advocates say the budget can't be balanced on the backs of cuts to the poor and sick.
What's going to happen when they do come up with one? He keeps wanting to cut this and cut that, and cuts aren't the answer.
One proposal would be adding new taxes on services, but some say that puts the burden on Illinois' fragile small businesses.
We think the service tax is regressive.
Business advocate Kim Meisch thinks raising the income tax could be more effective and less painful.
So at least from that perspective, it's based on one's ability to pay versus based on, someone needs their car fixed, so we're going to put additional tax on top of them.
But adds no taxes should be raised without workers' compensation and other reforms.
So there are lots of things that Governor Rauner has been pushing for and the NFIB has been pushing for that have to be part of any kind of budget deal, and that includes new revenue.
Governor Rauner has said he'd be open to some type of revenue plan, but won't discuss it with Democrats until they agree to at least some of his turnaround agenda. A change to the state constitution could mean better roads in Illinois. An amendment will be on the ballot in November, which would ensure all money collected for road projects is used for road repairs. Some of the money collected for roads is currently used for other state services, and some goes to the general fund.
It'll certainly benefit the public, in my view, because the money that really should have been taking care of our roads has been used for other things.
The Tazewell County engineer says it's important for taxpayers to know how their money is being spent. Interstate road signs across Illinois can be designated for fallen heroes. New legislation would make the process easier for families by not having them ask a lawmaker to introduce legislation for a designated sign. CIOTR's Kelsey Gibbs shares more.
Typical farm teenager. He was greatly involved in sports.
Donald Paneer is one proud father of all his kids, but he doesn't hesitate to sing praises about his son Philip.
He was involved in the U.S. Army at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. He was a full-time soldier.
But Paneer couldn't keep his son safe from war. Philip Paneer graduated high school and decided to join the U.S. Army. Shortly after being deployed to Iraq, the soldier was killed in combat.
Where we lost him and two others in ambush up by Kuwait in the Tigris River in January 8th of 2008.
Donald Paneer says he loves sharing the life of his son because it brings peace. But the loss is still hard for the family.
You never get through it. You take one step at a time, you go forward. Everybody hopes you never get the knock on the door.
The General Assembly wants to honor heroes like Paneer by creating the Heroes Way designation program. It would allow family members of fallen Illinois soldiers to apply for an honorary road designation as a tribute.
It's a way to bring closure to families. It's a way to bring closure to communities who've lost someone, and also really a way to honor their lives.
Currently, if a family wants to have a highway sign for their loved one, they must go through the legislature. This bill would change the process.
They can go directly to the Department of Transportation, make the application there, and then hopefully the department would sign off on it, and then we'd be able to move forward with it. And
Paneer says maybe sometime in the near future he will see his son's name on a sign along the interstate.
As far as Philip's friends, the community were involved in, yeah, it'll be a big thank you.
Now, the applicant has to be a family member who is related to the service member by blood, marriage, or adoption. The bill passed the House, now heads to the Senate for a vote. Still to come, lawmakers look to ensure justice for sexual assault victims, while they're hoping another set of eyes on a case will help. But first, back on the shelf, why a drug to treat HIV is getting a second look in Illinois. People who use medication for HIV treatment may soon see a familiar drug back on the shelves. We told you last week the life-saving drug Atripla was removed as the #1 recommended treatment for HIV due to safety concerns. It was forcing new patients to go through a lengthy authorization process before getting treatment. A committee on drugs and therapeutics will conduct a review of the drug and availability to Medicaid patients. The committee will consider effectiveness, outcomes, and safety issues.
So single tablet regimens are important because you get to prescribe them often if someone is at high risk of not being compliant with their medications. It's much easier to take one pill a day than to have to take a bunch of different ones.
The state also says existing patients prescribed Atripla won't be required to go through the authorization process. An extra set of eyes could soon be involved with rape cases. The goal? To prosecute predators and make sure nothing falls through the cracks. CIOTR Shane Gustafson has more on why lawmakers say adding the state's attorney to an investigation could make all the difference.
Without this evidence, oftentimes we're left with no ability to prosecute in a case.
Tazewell County State's Attorney Stuart Umholtz is talking about rape cases. A new bill could help prosecutors get closer to finding justice for victims.
This perhaps will help get those kits to the lab so that they can be analyzed because that information is very important for prosecution.
The bill, already approved by the state Senate, would make it mandatory for police departments to notify the state's attorney's office if a DNA match is made in a rape case, allowing the office to keep an eye on police and make sure they're taking action.
It's a good thing to be able to make sure that departments are doing this same type of thing, and then also with the communication with the state's attorney's office.
The Pekin Police Department says it already follows a similar procedure when it comes to rape cases.
Our policy actually prohibits us from just sitting it on a shelf and waiting for something to happen.
Detective Eaton says if any matches are made in a case, the department talks directly with the state's attorney's office. And Umholtz tells us that's a common practice in Tazewell County.
This will have very little impact in our area. We already have very good communications between law enforcement offices, our office, hospitals.
But it isn't happening all over the state, and that's why it's needed.
At smaller agencies, you have a little bit more checks and balances in place because number one, we all know each other.
It's always going to be advantageous to have information going to more than one agency.
The bill would require police departments to take inventory of rape kits and send that information to the state's attorney. The state police would also have to post that information online. Still ahead, e-cigarettes and kids, how children are being poisoned by the product without smoking. And Congress cracks down on opioid abuse. What a local lawmaker had to say about the issue during a stop in central Illinois.
You're watching Central Illinois on the Record.
A local congressman is joining the nation's fight against the growing opioid abuse epidemic. CIOTR's Lindsay Harrison was there as Representative Rodney Davis toured the McLean County Sheriff's and Coroner's offices last week to discuss the issue in Central Illinois.
Opioid addiction transcends all socioeconomic strata. This is an addiction that needs to be addressed at the user level and also at the law enforcement level.
Controlled substance arrests are up 70% in McLean County over just the last year.
and heroin overdoses are also on the rise.
Anytime it's a problem, it's a serious problem. It affects a lot of different areas, families being the main one.
Congressman Rodney Davis got the chance Monday to see the problem up close during a tour of the sheriff's and coroner's offices.
I never thought I would walk into a sheriff's office and see evidence like that. When I was growing up, the only people that used heroin were rock stars.
The congressman's district is ripe for these kinds of things, being the interstate system that comes through and the drugs that travel up and down those roads to get into our communities.
The Centers for Disease Control estimates 2 million people in the United States were dependent on painkillers in 2014. In 2015, 5 people overdosed and died in McLean County. 72% of car crashes were related to drugs or alcohol.
We've actually seen where the heroin needle is still in their arm when they've had the car crash.
This is district-wide, this is nationwide.
Representative Davis is pushing 5 pieces of legislation to deal with issues like preventing trafficking and funding rehabilitation programs and law enforcement training.
Hopefully with better legislation, more resources, we can get to where we need to be.
While these solutions won't be the final solutions for the opioid epidemic, hopefully they're good first steps.
The House passed nearly a dozen bills last week. The Senate has already approved several bills as well, meaning the versions will need to be reconciled before being sent to President Obama. E-cigarettes are poisoning kids, but not because they're being smoked. Several kids have been hospitalized after drinking liquid nicotine. One has died. Doctors say brightly colored bottles attract kids to the dangerous chemical. Some retailers in Peoria sell bottles with childproof lids.
They should keep them, out of reach, just as they would their cigarettes or any other product that has nicotine in it.
60 milligrams of nicotine can be deadly. The average bottle holds about 72. Still to come, after delaying a decision, Connect Transit wants to hear from you, how you can continue to weigh in on proposed route changes. And the closure of local power plants has environmentalists riled up, why they say it's a step back for Mother Nature.
You're watching Central Illinois on the Record.
Local environmental groups are calling out a power company for closing plants in Illinois. Dynegy announced last week it was closing operations at several plants in Baldwin and Newton. The Central Illinois Community Alliance in Peoria says these are some of the cleanest Dynegy plants and sees this as a step back for environmental justice.
The energy economy is changing, and we are going to be left behind if we don't step out and figure out how we're going to react and what we're going to do.
Dynegy says these plants did not recover basic operating costs, and that's why they have to be shut down. The Bloomington City Council takes the first step toward creating a TIF district in downtown Bloomington. It's an area where businesses are offered incentives in exchange for local development. The council approved a feasibility study for the TIF district. It would cover 3 city blocks, including the site that's being considered for a new hotel and conference center. Although the city is moving forward with the TIF district, council has not approved the hotel development. Another brewery could be heading to the Twin Cities. Chad Beavers has been home brewing beer for 13 years and has won dozens of awards, including second place at the National Homebrew Competition. He wants to open his own brewery in Bloomington Normal, and he's asking for help from his fans. The Lil Beaver Brewery would be open on weekends. Beavers is hoping to open a tap room for customers to taste his beers. He has a Kickstarter campaign, which is already more than half funded in less than a couple of weeks.
It takes a whole family of beavers to build a dam, and we're looking at all of our customers and fans to be our family in building this brewery and bringing it to Bloomington Normal.
The Kickstarter campaign closes in June. Beavers is hoping to open his brewery next year. Connect Transit says it's continuing to take comments from people about proposed bus route changes. The Board of Trustees decided last week to delay voting on the changes in order to get more feedback. Trustees say they want to make sure the new route system is in line with what the community needs.
We've had some concerns, support, suggestions all come out kind of in the final hours, so we thought why not use these last 3 weeks to continue to listen to that feedback.
You can mail or email suggestions. Comments must be sent by May 18th, but Connect Transit is holding another listening session on Thursday from 5 to 6:30 in the 4th floor multi-purpose room at Uptown Station. Sewage leaking into the Illinois River and other local waterways is an issue city staff in Peoria have been trying to tackle for years. River City leaders announced last week a list of environmentally friendly programs brainstormed by the city's innovation team, also aimed at improving the quality of life in Peoria. Too much rainfall or snow melt causes the combined sewer overflow problem because the sewer system dates back before the 1930s. The city will launch a complete Green Streets pilot program this month, which will divert storm water using things like rain gardens. A Walk the Block program also begins this month.
That is a way to raise awareness about the importance of walkable streets, about the significance of community building, promoting public health through walking. All those things tie into and would be supported by this eventual network of complete green streets.
A number of new initiatives will roll out over the next year and a half, including a youth workforce training program. Peoria leaders are also working with the Environmental Protection Agency to come up with a complete plan. Up next, Hispanic outreach in Central Illinois, why the Mexican consulate made a stop in Peoria. The First United Methodist Church of Peoria serves a diverse community, reaching the Hispanic population across Central Illinois. That included hosting the Mexican consulate from Chicago. It's a one-stop shop for the same services they'd wait months to get in the Windy City.
It's very convenient and quick. More than anything, it's quick.
That's not a phrase most of us are used to hearing in the same sentence as passport, but Martha Campos came to Peoria from Princeton to get her Mexican passport renewed. The whole process took less than 2 hours.
It's very different than the American passport. You know, you go to the post office and you get these papers right there. But for us, it needs to be in a consulate.
The consulate's visit from Chicago makes a huge difference to the thousands of Hispanics in Peoria.
The only Mexican consulate we have close by is in Chicago. And because they serve a humongous number of Mexicans, if you're trying to make an appointment for any paper that you need, it's going to take 2 or 3 months until you get an appointment.
Campos has been in Illinois for 24 years, but still has family back home.
I have one sister, and I have my aunts. I got a grandma. I still have a grandma in Mexico, and I got my dad's and my mom's family in Mexico, so I'll go and visit.
Mexico allows double nationality, making trips across the border a lot easier. Norma Moreno with the Mexican consulate explains that if a person is born in the U.S. but has parents from Mexico, they still have rights as a Mexican citizen. Foreign citizens, on the other hand, can't stay in the country for longer than 6 months at a time. A passport, which can be good for 3, 6, or 10 years, makes a difference for people who want to stay longer, including students.
They want to go to attend school, the university, for example. They want to go to college in Mexico. They can do it if they have a Mexican passport because they are going to be attending as Mexican citizens. So it's, yeah, they can have a lot of benefits.
Todos como mexicanos debemos tener nuestro pasaporte.
The consulate is in Peoria until noon Sunday. If you want to make an appointment, you can call 877-639-4835. The consulate will make a stop in Bloomington at the Lawrence Irvin Center between the 18th and 22nd. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of Central Illinois on the Record. Of course, you can stay in touch with us using social media. Connect with CIOTR and me on Facebook and Twitter using the hashtag CIOTR, and we will see you next week.
The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of WMBD, WYZZ, or Nexstar Broadcasting Group.